Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan, Jim Nill coming up, GM of the Stars and Associate GM for Team Canada at the Four Nations Face-Off. So we'll get into a number of things with Jim. Luke Willson later in the hour. I cannot wait for this game tonight, Packers-Lions. It's going to be a great game. We get the Raptors playing the Thunder. Raptors have been playing really well, but OKC is a powerhouse, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander back in town. Always a fun night. It's going to be fun. A lot going on here, man. A lot going on. Leafs Caps tomorrow night, and Zach Hyman's returning for Edmonton tonight. That's a big one. He's stepping right back onto that top line.
I don't know. I feel like it happened in Ottawa the night I was calling. Like it was down in the right corner.
Yeah, it did happen
hit
there.
awkwardly. I think he got hit awkwardly because he didn't finish the game on the power play. Remember, they put Perry on the power play at the end of that game. I don't think he played the last 12 to 15 minutes. I think he got hit awkwardly. I don't know. Again, I'm not a doctor or whatever, but they're missing him. Well, they're getting him back, getting Arvidsson back, and I don't know. I was fishing around to see when Vander Kane would be eventual, but apparently it's still month to month. That's the words.
Yeah. Into the new year, I think.
I think they're going to treat him like an acquisition at the deadline type of thing. Cap type of thing.
Yeah, there's some manipulation going on out there. Little bit of cap manipulation. And that's fine.
He's such a big piece for those guys, but you wonder what it's going to be like moving around after that surgery.
That's the thing. He's not 26 anymore, but he's not 38. He's an effective player, but to jump on a moving train, he's going to have to get some games in. I don't think it's the Kucherov where that was a special performance.
That's a once in a lifetime.
It is.
We were talking about that. There's a list guys who came back after a long break. And I think, Mario Lemieux's at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Remember Lemieux, his first game back after years away? I think he scored a hat trick his first game back. I remember the one he returned against the Leafs. I can't remember which return that was.
That was the most recent one. He almost won the MVP, and he played 45 games.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, he it was crazy. He would leave for years and come back and just go and dominate. Mario would be at the top. I think Jordan returning from the retirement. It took him a little while. I remember he was number 45. It was so
Dude,
awkward.
I got one for you. Pavel Bure missed, I think he was sitting out in Van, and they finally traded him to Florida. This guy just showed up and started ripping home breakaway goals for fun every single night, man.
He was
insane.
Else.
Yeah.
Didn't play the first half of the season. It was a long break, and he just came back and was like, watch this.
I got one farther down the list. Our buddy Gary Roberts. Remember he had a disc?
Broken neck,
that type of... And he came back and I want to say, I don't know if he ripped home 50 after or before. He played for a while after it.
Oh, a long
He didn't
time.
go back with Calgary. He came back with the Carolina Hurricanes.
That's what I mean. It was everyone thought his career was over, and then he came back with vengeance, and you know how
he was meaner than ever.
Exactly.
He was more angry than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, he scored
awesome.
50 in Calgary for sure. I don't know if he ever scored 50 after returning.
Yeah.
But then Carolina, then he came up to Toronto, and he was a bull up here, and that was a big one. You're right. Gary Roberts would be high on that list, and we'll see if Evander Kane can do it. Patrick Kane did it one year as well, right? He was. I think they won a cup that year when he returned. So it's not easy to do, but superstar players, they're special for a reason, and sometimes they can just jump on the ice after missing a lot of time and look like a superstar almost immediately. All right, Luke Willson later in the hour. Yesterday was a big day. It became official. Who's going to the Four Nations face-off and who's representing Canada? It's always a great conversation. Always, predictions and mock drafts and all that kind of stuff. But we now have the answer. And a member of the front office crew that put this team together joins us now, and he joins us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. He's the GM of the Dallas Stars, and, again, a member of the front office for Team Canada, the Four Nations face-off. Here's Jim Nill. How you doing, Jim?
Yeah, I'm great, Brian, Jeff, and Jamie. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. Are you somewhat relieved that the whole world now knows what team you're putting together for the Four Nations face-off, or what?
Well, it's good that we got to keep moving forward here. So it's great for the players. Disappointing for some guys that didn't make it, I know. But one thing I keep reminding people is the tournament's not till February, and we're in December here, so there's still a long runway. And like I said, we're excited about the process, and I'm looking forward to those games in February.
Well, Jim, you got, we'll call it an embarrassment of riches to choose from. Is it hard to not just make an all-star team, but to try and, make a team that would be cohesive and play and maybe define roles for players?
Well, it definitely was. That was the tough part. When you get down to kind of the last, those guys are going to play in those 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th spots in the roster, and there's probably 10 or 11, 12 players that deserve to be there that didn't make it. And that's the tough part, but it's an honor to be in that mix. We've talked to some of the players. I've had a couple of those players in my team that are in those positions, and first of all, it's an honor to be in that position, and they do realize that. And but those decisions are tough, but they're good decisions to have to make.
Jim, who was making a call on a 50-50 play? Like, if it was this guy or that guy, was that Coop? Was that Army? Was that all you guys together? Like, how did you come together on a 50-50 type of decision?
Really came, it was a great process. We had great conversation, and we did include the coaches. We actually had all the coaches involved in it, and when it came down to the wire, it was a gut feel that guys had for players. And then we wanted to make sure that John had to be comfortable with the players he wanted. That's very important as a coach, and especially in a tournament like this where it's, everybody's going to be playing that Saturday or Sunday. You're flying to Montreal sometime on Sunday, practicing Monday and playing Tuesday. So it's a pretty quick turnaround for everybody. So we wanted to make sure, John was comfortable with the players he had. He had input like everybody else, but it was really I'm really proud of the whole group, just the consensus, the games that everybody saw. We saw almost close to 200 games, the staff, including the coaches and that. So it's a great process. But I guess to answer your question, we really didn't. It was pretty close, but in the end, John and Don had to make those final calls. They're in that position, and we fully supported them.
With Jim Nill, the associate GM of Canada for the Four Nations Face-Off, GM of the Dallas Stars. I'm always curious how you handle your own players. When you're in the room and Dallas Star players come up, do you have to recuse yourself? Do you step out of the room? Like, how do you apply to conversations about your own club team?
That's where I get back to I'm really proud of the staff we're with. And when we met back in August up in Edmonton to have our first meeting to start this process, we were very, very open. We peeled the banana back, and we were very open and said, look, we're going to be talking about players we know. It's going to be some of our own players. But we got to be very forthright and very honest about it, and that's what we did. And in the end, the players kind of make those decisions for you. And we were very honest with how our players were playing, and really, like I said, the guys, if there was a question marks on somebody, we made sure somebody from the staff came in and saw them individually, so it just wasn't on our, if I was talking about my players, I wanted to make sure the other staff saw them, and we did that. We crossed over it a lot, so the process worked pretty smooth.
Was there any difference? I'm not sure how much you pay attention to media and the noise outside, but certainly it's very noisy when it comes to Canadian goaltending. Was it a different process with that, or kind of the same process in dealing with just, players up front and your defensemen?
It was really the same process. We went through our due diligence, checked up on guys. We had it wasn't a long list, it's just 6 or 7 guys. And something, what's tough for this tournament is we're making decisions in December, and there's still a long runway to go here, and especially with goaltending. Jamie, you've been there, you've done it, you've lived it. We're going to get into end of January, 1st of February, who's going to be hot and who's not, and that's kind of how you want to ride. So when you got to make decisions in December, it's a little bit different, but the goalies we picked have great resumes. Bennington's beat us out of the Stanley Cup playoffs many times down in Dallas. He's played great. He's won a cup. We've gone head-to-head against Adin Hill the last 2 years in a row. They beat us out in the conference finals went the cup, and then we beat him last year in the first round. So we know him very well, and he's a great goalie. And so really, those two guys kind of really stood out, and their resumes and their pedigree speaks for itself. And then Montembeault's a kind of a younger guy, up and coming, and has done the job for Canada at the World Championships and other games. So, like I said, we're pretty confident with these three guys.
With Jim Nill, the history of Canadian hockey has been a confident history. And what I mean by that is generally you put your team together historically, and I think you let every other country worry about you. I don't know if that applies anymore. I'm curious if it does, or if even you would suggest that's an accurate assessment, because I think you look at the American team, they are loaded, and I'm curious if the staff, when you were thinking of which players should make the team, a lot of the guys are obvious. A lot of guys we knew who were going to make this team. I'm sure you knew before you stepped in that room. But, the third line, fourth line, fifth, sixth, seventh defenseman, third goalie, etc., how much of those decisions came down to, can that guy compete and play against whoever's on the American team?
Well, it's not only the American team. I think we got to give respect. You mentioned that, Canada, we've put teams together, and it's kind of our tournament to lose.
Yep.
Well, those days have changed. And that's not knocking our Canadian hockey. We've got great, great players, but I think it's more of a compliment to what the rest of the world has done. The U.S. and Americas of what they've done with their program. They're producing players at an amazing rate. They're doing a great job. Sweden has done a great job developing players, and Finland the same thing. I'm reaping the rewards of Finland's development. My top players are from Finland. So I think it's less of a knock against Canada. I think we're still producing great players, but I think we need to respect and compliment the other countries, the job that they're doing, and probably we need to respect that, or it's a compliment that how our game's grown. It's a global game now, and these players that we're seeing coming from all over the world, it's amazing the skill level they have and the competitiveness now that they have. So it just shows that our game is growing at a great level.
Jimmy, did you have to call guys and let them know that injury or something, like you're on call, or how did that go down? And also let them know that they didn't make the team? Did those calls have to be made?
Well, first of all, we kind of had a select group of guys that we all called that made the team, and then we've kind of gone around. I've got a few guys on my team that are in a position. Each one of us have some guys, so we've kind of talked to our own personal players, where they're at, and just kind of talked, some other players that are close. We want to make sure they understand that they're right there, and it's it's not only for this tournament. The other thing is we have the Olympics in a year, and so it's about that too. So it's a bigger picture than just picking a roster in December and playing February and it's goodbye type of thing. This is a process. We started this back in August, and it's a process to get into February, and then the next step is the Olympics. And we're seeing some of these younger players. We're evaluating them, and we're going to continue to monitor them. You start seeing the Celebrinis, Bedard, Suzuki's. There's a bigger picture out there than just this Four Nations tournament.
Well, you mentioned choosing the team this early. How big of a challenge is that? Because, guys might be on fire right now and cool off by February, or vice versa. Somebody that maybe, was passed over and you're looking for the big picture. And all of a sudden that guy goes on fire and scores 15, 20 goals by February. Like, how did you have to balance that out and weigh that out potentially from the noise, I guess, outside, and even what you're looking at for what your team is right now and having to build it or put the list in, December 2nd?
Well, Jamie, that's probably been our biggest hurdle. As I mentioned, we started this back in August, and we knew we had a short runway, pick the team in December. So, first of all, who's playing the best during those times? But we're experienced enough staff to know that a lot of these guys have resumes, and you got to go off resumes. Even though somebody may be struggling, they've built up career over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years of being an elite player. Yes, they're struggling, but we know they're going to get out of it. And that was probably the toughest part, is getting a feel for that, respecting those guys that have built up those resumes. We're big part of our building a team was you look at our roster, been a lot of winning done by a lot of players, and that's important when you get into these tournaments. And so that came into play a lot. But then on the flip side, there were some young guys that are knocking on the door, and it's becoming their time. We haven't had one of these tournaments, I think it's 8 years, and there's a turning of the guard, and we had to respect that also.
Well, I'm curious how you feel the players are going to approach this tournament, because it is a new tournament. It's an NHLPA driven tournament, and it's in replacement of the All-Star game, but it is best on best. These are the best players from Canada, the U.S., Sweden, and Finland. We know once you get to the Olympics, it's going to be legit, and everyone's going to put everything on the line. Do you have any doubt that this will feel similar to the Olympic Games? Like, what kind of message would you be sending to the players, or what kind of reaction would you expect the players to have in terms of the style of play, the physicality, the animosity, once we actually get to this tournament?
Well, I'll share with you. I won't say the players' names, but I had my list of players I had to call, and I know the one player I called when I called him and said, "Hey, it's first of all, it's Jim Nill from Dallas, and heads up, you're not being traded." So we had a little chuckle over that. But I said, congratulations, you've been selected for Team Canada for Four Nations. And the phone went blank, and I waited about 20 seconds. I said, "Are you still there?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "You know what? I can't believe this. This is a dream come true." I think that answers your question there. I think the players are so wired for this. I know I've got the Finnish players on my team. They haven't had a chance to play for their country. It's been a long time. And there's something special when you put that flag, you put that jersey on, it's your country. It really brings something out. And you guys know all these players. They're thoroughbreds. They're wired. They love best on best. They're driven. They're driven guys. They can't wait to get on that ice surface and show that who's the best. So I think it's going to be great hockey.
Yeah, we're all looking forward to it. I mean, Jim, put yourself. I don't know if you've gone through this before, but you're sitting in the luxury box for Team Canada, and say you're in the finals against Team USA, and it's Jake Ottinger at the other end, standing on his head. Like, what type of emotions go through your mind? I mean, that's a scenario that could actually play out.
No, it isn't. That's what's going to be different. And when we talked earlier of our conversation, we peeled the banana back, and our job is to win for Canada. We've been hired to do this, and so we're going to. Whatever information I got, unfortunately, I'm going to use. And that's funny you say that, because I was just talking to Jake the other day, and I'm like, "Hey, we're talking about the game coming up." I said, "Good luck." And then we said, "Yeah, except when we play against each other." And that's just the way it is. Yeah. That's how we're wired. It's just it's the game. It's what makes it great.
Yeah. Did you guys take a second at all to look back and see McKinnon, McDavid, Makar, and Marner? Just take one glance at that. I know it's about the team, but that's going to be exciting, isn't it, Jim, to see those guys all with this, even Sid thrown in there, all with the same jersey on, going over the boards one after the other. That's got to be pretty exciting.
Well, it is. It's like I said. We've been waiting for this. We've been kind of, just because of circumstances out of everybody's control, we've been waiting to see this. And as much as we're excited, you can just imagine how these players are to be able to do what they want to do in that.
It's going to be awesome. Can't wait for it. I know it's a busy time of year for you, obviously dealing with a lot of different things on your plate. But we appreciate you finding some time for us today and going through this, and I'm sure we'll do it again down the road. Thank you, Jim.
All right. Yeah, you guys take care. Thanks for everything.
You got it. There's Jim Nill, the GM of the Dallas Stars, but also a part of the front office for Team Canada at the Four Nations Face-Off, joining us here at the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. There's some breaking news in the NHL. Luke Richardson has been fired as the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks.
Shameful, man.
So he's out, and Anders Sorensen, who had been coaching the American League team, is up on an interim basis. But
I mean,
they're last place in the league, but I don't know,
I would
man.
be
That team-
shocked. First of all, I never heard of the guy. Maybe he's a good coach. I'd never heard of that guy. I would be shocked if there's a coach bump with those players. There's some good players there, but you just watch them play and you're like, man. It's like the only way I can describe it, guys, is some of the bad teams you watch, they play the same game most nights. Where it's like that Nashville team, they're in it right now where it's like they play good enough to lose most nights.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same game. It's like that's what they do. Sometimes when you put a team together, that's what they do. And a lot of these teams, that's what they're doing on a nightly basis. And sometimes when you do that, that's what you are.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
That's what's interesting, because this is, the general manager making a call on that he believes his team is either underperforming or needs a jolt. And that's, I don't know. We've watched Chicago. I've watched them several times. I watched that game last night, that Bruins Blackhawks. I had that on the side, and they are what they are. Like, they've tried to improve some of the players. They put NHL players around Bedard, but those players are at where they are in their career. Did you notice Taylor Hall that night against Toronto?
No. I mean, he was a healthy scratch a couple of weeks ago.
Right, they're trying, and I like Taylor a lot. It's just like he hasn't found his game. He missed a whole season. Like, he hasn't found his game yet. Like, to me, I think, I don't know where they're if there's another level there because of a coach.
No, I don't see
this
it.
isn't Boston where they felt they're better, and it's like, okay, we can, something's not jiving here. We're going to nail the coach and slide Joe Sacco in there, and they've had a response. St. Louis has had a response with Jimmy Montgomery going in there, but do you see Chicago all of a sudden rattling off?
No,
5,
and
6
we had Kyle Davidson on Monday. He came on the show and was talking about the struggles and talking about how, again, they think that he's clearly going to think that they've put better pieces together.
Right.
And in issuing a statement, Davidson said, quote, "As we've begun to take steps forward in our rebuilding process, we felt that the results did not match our expectations for a higher level of execution this season, and ultimately came down to the decision that a change was necessary."
Good luck, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make those comments, and he's basically covering his own ass, because when we talked about if they're the same garbage next year, someone's going to tap Davidson and say, what is this? It's still garbage.
Right. This feels like ownership, too, a little bit, where the owner maybe stepped in and said, we're not
Gave
even
a little
selling
nudge.
tickets.
Yeah, we're
We
getting
need
a
something,
little
right?
nudge saying we still suck, and it's I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
Better
and also,
speed up.
it's the glory days now. That was almost 10 years ago. Like they won those 3 cups in 5 years or 6 years. That was a decade ago. It's like Pittsburgh, man. Pittsburgh won in 15-16. Chicago won before that. Like they won in 10, 12, and 14, I believe it was.
That's why it's
a decade
crazy.
ago.
Dude, that's why it's crazy when you reference Pittsburgh. They won back-to-back cups. For someone to think that they were going to just turn back the clock 10 years later and pick off another one, they already did that once.
Right, exactly. They
They
circled
won in
back through.
2009.
Right.
And then again in 15-16. It ain't happening again.
Well,
Sorry.
No, but, the guy going in there's a reason why he got a 7-year deal. The mandate, and again, he's managing up. He's probably got a mandate from the ownership going, we're going to try here the next 2 years, and that's what he did. He had Carlson traded for Riley Smith, and
You're talking about Dubas.
Yes, I'm talking about Dubas in Pittsburgh. I'm saying,
I know, but Noodles, it's still crazy for them to just say, we're not doing it. Like, to sit back and say, we're not doing nothing, go ahead and watch this because we're going to be like this for 2 more years, that's insane.
Well, and this summer, it's like Kevin Hayes, trading for Kevin Hayes. Like,
Right.
It wasn't like, hey, we're going to cycle through and try and, he has brought in some younger players. But for the most part, it's like he's trying on the fly. I think he's given himself a window or given them a window saying, you know what, this is the mandate for a couple years. I'm going to do what I can to make us competitive or, keep it, however you want to frame it. But then, at some point you have to give me a green light to blow it up or build it the way that I want.
Well, and what's scary is these 2 juggernauts of, again, the Blackhawks in their heyday, the Penguins in their heyday. They went 2 different directions, but they've ended up in the same spot, where Pittsburgh kept the band together and they kept all their veterans and they kept their legends and they've tried to piece it together, and Chicago completely blew it up. Taves retired, Kane they moved off, Keith they traded, they've moved off the coach, they moved off, a lot of different things, and they completely.
Difference, though.
Well, they went scorched earth, and they bottomed out, and they got Bedard. Pittsburgh didn't do that.
That's what I was going to say. One difference is there is a golden goose potentially in Chicago, whereas Pittsburgh, that's not there yet.
Well, right? And I think that is really what this is about, is them looking at Bedard's start to the season and saying, we can't have this. We can't have this guy in a position where he's having a sophomore slump. He doesn't look like he's...
That's nonsense, too, that philosophy. It's like, what, are you just giving him a hall pass saying that's the coach's fault? You don't have any goals? That's stupid.
Well, I hear you.
That's just more into the life of just zero accountability. God forbid if somebody doesn't have success, it's not your fault, the actual player that goes out on the ice. We'll blame it on the coach. Don't worry about it, kid.
Well,
we got you
that's
back.
Modern sports, man. I hear you, but that's it. That's modern sports.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah, the coach will fall on the sword, and the GM might be next. But they've gone scorched earth in Chicago for Bedard, and their whole marketing campaign is this guy's going to be a superstar, and they need it to work. Yep. And again, this year is gone. They're dead last in the league. It's over. Like, there's no turning this around. And the roster is terrible. They're just not a good team.
No.
But yeah, I don't expect any new coach bump, but I think what they'll be looking for is Bedard to look different and feel different. I don't think that'll affect wins and losses necessarily. It will to a certain extent, but they need him moving, and I'm sure that factored in greatly to what happened here today. Luke Richardson being fired by the Blackhawks. Pierre LeBrun will join us just after 6 on that and more. Now, it's starting to come now. You're getting some coaches that are moving on, and I wouldn't be shocked if we saw another one before the new year. So Pierre coming up. Luke Willson will join us. We'll get his take on what Aaron Rodgers had to say. Is he kind of begging the Jets to have him back now? What's this going to look like into the future? And what does he make of the game tonight? Team Owen Wilson on the clock. Down a field goal. Down 3. Hayes and Bro up 3 going into week 14. Luke coming up in studio. He will join us next.
If you smell what the
Owen Wilson
is cooking, girl, you know it's true.
Love the Milli Vanilli. It's just built in now, man. It's baked in. It's a part of the program. There he is, Mr. Big Shot at the Leaf game last night. Right down in the lower
Leaf
bowl.
game.
Listen, I'll be honest with you, Hayes, and this is not a troll. The amount of people that just tapped me saying Hayes is a fraud, it was unbelievable. And I'm not joking.
You are joking.
We're at Real Sports before the game. Guys coming up to me, Hayes is a fraud, Al's brother is a bot. I mean this when I say that the vast majority of Toronto just love Team Owen Wilson and cannot stand how insufferable you two are.
That's disappointing to hear. I find
The one that really must cut deep for you guys is when they say to me that those guys are just nobodies. Like, that is an insult. Dude, when they say a nobody, that's an insult, man.
Well, what does it say about you guys? We're lapping you the last, 6 to 8 weeks.
No, since the Noodle, a.k.a. Al Pacino, in Any Given Sunday speech.
That is true. That hurt.
We're fighting for every inch. We're 4-1. We're 4-1 with a big
Berry.
mistake from me.
Here's what I'm going to say about that, though. I wanted to get back to, close to even.
Yeah.
And if they struggle, they're getting the same speech, but in a different way. So I've got, like I say,
I appreciate that, Noodles. But you got to understand,
neutral.
They won't respond the way we responded to your speech. A speech to them, you got to really coddle and put your arm around them.
They just get caught up in their own beliefs and stupid stats and TG. They don't care.
Well, you guys needed a kick in the ass. That's what I like. I felt
we need tonight, Noodles. We need tonight.
Yeah,
what a ball game tonight, man. I am so jacked. I really feel like this is exactly what the NFL's looking for. Al Michaels will be on fire tonight. This is a great ball game. It's a great ball game, and I honestly think, if Detroit loses tonight, Green Bay's on their heels. Minnesota's on their heels. They have so many injury problems on that defensive side of the ball. I don't know if that division is even locked in by Detroit, let alone the conference, if they lose tonight.
You're completely right on that, Hayes. If they lose tonight, and even if they win tonight, obviously I wouldn't say the division's locked. I mean, you look, they got the Bills next week. I mean, that's going to be an absolute showdown. Mm-hmm. And both teams are fighting for the 1 seed. And quite simply, the Vikings' schedule from here on out is much easier.
Yep.
And they're only a game back. Now, the head-to-head, obviously the Lions have. They play in Week 18. And even that Vikings game against Detroit, it came down, I believe it was a 2-point win for Detroit. not last second, but, last whatever second field goal. Stats were pretty much across the board the same. Turnovers were the same. Like, this is a very, very open division, and it's tough for Detroit fans, and I do feel some sympathy for them because it's like, okay, we've got a team for the first time. I mean, last year towards the end, you're like, hey, this team could do it. From the start of the season, this has been a Super Bowl contending team. Mm-hmm. I think everyone agree with that. And
Absolutely.
I read a stat. I'm not going to butcher it, but basically since the merger, this is the toughest division in the history of the NFL, again, since the merger. Like, all three teams are absolutely stacked.
And the Bears were 4-2 to start the year. Couldn't get out of his own way.
That's the thing. I would also argue that the Bears should have some more wins in there.
I think they have better coaching. Like if Jim Harbaugh is their coach, I think they got 7 or 8 wins.
Yeah,
I do. I think so in Chicago.
That. Parts, that's a crazy comment.
You know what? Man. Sometimes I let this guy just spew some nonsense. Parts. Let him keep going. Inflate his head.
They'd have way more wins than they did. Way more
That's
wins.
a crazy comment. They suck. Parts, let me ask you this. When we were doing our what I call boardroom chats this morning, going over things, I need you to explain one thing to me. These guys don't even know what that is.
No, they got no idea. They got
no idea. Film room, boardrooms, like none of it.
Yes.
Detroit's been crushing teams. And
Yeah.
We're not going to reveal our pick, but without revealing the pick, why not crush the Pack tonight?
So, I look at Detroit's offense, and I think that, and I believe this is the best offense in the NFL. I think it's the most well-balanced. They got a great veteran, really core of guys. They're executing at a high level. So that's partially why they've been crushing guys. Their offense gets out, they score, they get up early, and then their defense has been kind of middle of the road all year, and they've been able to at least get a turnover or a stop, or they played very good in the red zone, forced a field goal. And next thing you know, it's like, hey, Lions score 7, we gave up 3. Lions score 7, we give up 3, and it's 14-6. And now you're kind of one-dimensional as an offense. So where I get nervous now for the Lions, they had this big margin of error for mistakes and still being able to win. But now you look at the 13 players they have on injured reserve. 11 of those are in their front 7, meaning defensive line and linebacker. Now you look at tonight, that's not including DJ Reader, who's out tonight. Mm-hmm. Pascal's out. There's another defensive lineman out. So you're sitting here, and I say to myself, that margin for error is shrinking. I am not saying that the Lions can't run the NFC, win every game, because I believe that this offense is that good. But they simply will need help on defense, specifically in the run game up front. You cannot lose this many people. And again, we talk about the kind of chess game, Partsy, where now if I'm Green Bay tonight, it's keep Jared Goff, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Amon-Ra St. Brown off the field. And we're doing that by handing to Jacobs. We'll get Kraft involved early on some play actions. And then we got to get the stop now. Again, it's a very tough division, hard-nosed game. I expect it to go down that way. But I think that the defense is in such shambles that it now opens the doors to potentially getting beat tonight, potentially getting beat by the Vikings in Week 18, more so than it did, let's call it 5-6 weeks ago.
And I think if they get healthy between now and the playoffs, regardless of what their final record is, they can retain that title as the best team in the NFC. Like I'm not doubting what they're going to do in the playoffs, but all these injuries they're concerning, man. I think Jordan Love has himself a night. He loves Ford Field. I think he's been getting better since the bye week. I think he's healthy. I think they moved the ball around tonight, and I think he's going to have a lot of time. I mean, I think their line is going to be upright, and again, I don't think there'll be a lot of pressure on him tonight. And again, if Jacobs is running like you said, opens up a play action, that is something that I expect to see early and often tonight.
I don't like how Hayes is pushing us in this direction, though. I'll be honest.
I've told you, man, on the record, I think Green Bay wins tonight. And I'm seeing the board very clearly.
I'll be honest. I even if this is reverse psychology, I am on the same vibe here. I think Green Bay's got. If it was 3, I would be much more hesitant. But at 3.5, the idea that this game isn't just an absolute war that ends in a last-second field goal to me is tough. It is very, very tough. If you want to go Detroit, we can go that way, but I lean heavily Green Bay. Green Bay 3.5. Again, I could see this thing coming down to a Jared Goff 2-minute drive, He gets it done.
It's
Where
always
you guys
your
at?
call.
You had your
Dude,
boardroom.
we're
You had your
locking in. We're
boardroom.
locking in Green Bay. Okay.
You taking the points?
3.5.
I'm just going to throw this out there.
Lock
I
it
didn't
in.
like the snow call, and I
No
think
call did not work.
Twice.
no.
Twice.
We would be whatever. One back right now, if not for the snow call.
You mean
Technically,
leading.
The fact
we'd
that
be
we
leading,
talked
yes.
ourselves into the Dolphins winning in Green Bay,
That was bad.
dude. We should be suspended for weeks for
But
that.
again,
And thinking San Fran, it would have to be the worst snowstorm to ever hit the Buffalo area for San Fran to have a chance in that game to stop Josh Allen. We were morons for thinking like that. I like the pick, but I just think there's an outside chance that Detroit blows out Green Bay tonight. And I know you guys don't think anything like that.
Don't see it. I don't
blows
see
them
it
out.
happening.
Yeah.
If the Lions get blown out, we're going to be in absolute shambles. I'm sorry, if the Packers get blown out, it's not good for us.
Okay.
But that being said, if they cover this 3.5, the amount of pressure on tomorrow's phone call, because it's their pick and they cannot pick right now. They are blind. They have lost the board.
We've lost 3 in a row now.
Since Noodle's speech, they cannot see. And all of a sudden, Sunday, it could be, it could get greasy.
It could get greasy. It could get greasy. Dave tweeting in, I think this is very accurate. He said, Owen Wilson, they're like the Leafs. They're loved in Toronto, but the rest of Canada's cheering for them to lose. Hayes and Al's brother are Canada's gamblers, and that's accurate. Throughout the
Canada's
country,
team.
Hayes and Bro, we're loved in the
Where's
prairies.
Dave from? Where is he from?
Dave's probably from the prairies.
No,
would be
the
my
prairies
guess.
love us.
Guaranteed. Dave's from
The prairies are
Saskatoon.
on us.
Yeah,
He's from Saskatoon or
This
something.
guy's a Quebec guy. Dave's Quebec.
No, he's from Steinbach, Manitoba.
Manitoba. I know where
Dave is a
Steinbach is.
grizzled veteran that knows what's up.
Dave, that's disappointing.
I love what
That's
he says.
Al's brother's basement is his account name.
Steinbach is awesome. That's a gritty city. Man.
That
They don't
sounds
mess
gritty.
around.
It sounds
Yeah.
gritty. I want to play this Aaron Rodgers clip where he's asked about his future in New York, and this is now spinning into a level of desperation I was not prepared for.
Dude, Hayes, before you get into it, who's watching that stupid Netflix on him doing all that crazy stuff? Did
Him
you
coming
watch
back from the Achilles. Well,
that was the
I haven't
trailer's
watched it
tough.
yet.
it
I'll watch
should
it.
be something that pops, but no one trusts Aaron Rodgers
No.
and his creative control.
The
That's
other
what.
thing-
That's the
yes,
problem.
if I was them now, especially if he's coming back, and maybe that's, I don't know how Netflix contracts work, but hold it for another year.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, where's the end? The pot of gold at the end of this rainbow
Yeah, but
here.
parts,
3
you
and
know
9.
how that works. If
They
it
were
disappears and fades into
just-
the sunset, nobody will care about the guy, period.
They were banking on him being a rock star this year. They were
Yeah.
banking on 9-3 in the MVP hunt. Wait until you see this, and now Netflix is like, well, we just dumped a lot of money into this whole thing, and nobody cares anymore. But here's what Rodgers had to say about his future with the Jets.
I just redid my house here in Jersey, so my goal was to play a few more years here, but we'll see. I'd like to be healthy. I'd like to end on my feet, and then I'd like to play well, and I'd like, to feel like I'm wanted back. If not, that's, again, I will not be offended. I won't be upset. I'll be so thankful either way, whatever happens here. But, I got to be healthy mentally, physically, and then there's got to be interest on both sides. And if that's not the case, then I'll look at other options. But first I'll think about whether I actually want to play or not. But it usually takes a good, month to get away from it, which I'll do the first month, and then see what happens.
What do you make of that?
Well, to be honest, the month comment is spot on. I would say the majority of NFL players after year 4 are like, I'm done, I'm retiring, and then it's a month off, and you're like, I'm not retiring. So I understand that, but the fact that he's not like more serious about retiring right now, my guy is coming back next year. There's no way he's retiring.
Dude, you can't be optimistic about it, Parts. I'm sorry.
Well,
I know you love the dude.
Here's where I get jammed up, though. If you're the Jets, which obviously they're not in a good situation here, whoever the new GM that they hire is, my question would be, what's the better option? And I mean that sincerely.
Why would you want to torture everyone like this again? I would do anything to not torture the fan base, to what I just gave them with these players.
Okay, and I know people be like, oh, wins, losses, whatever. The offense is better with him than Zach Wilson last year. It just simply is. And I'm not saying the offense is good, but they have looked way better. And at least at times, there's been a lot of times they've looked extremely incompetent. There's been times where they've been competent. at least the odd flash.
The goalposts are moving here, though.
No, my question is, if you're the GM, Hayes, who do you go get? Like, who's going to be out there?
Well, I mean, I'd be thinking I'm tanking for Arch Manning. That's what I'd be doing. Like, I would literally be thinking I'm blowing this up. That Arch Manning kid's coming out, I think, next year. I'm tanking for that kid. I'll go 0-17 and bring Manning in. He could take the subway like his uncle.
Yeah, that's a route. Then if that's the route, they let Aaron go.
Yes,
and he follows Brett Favre 2.0 footsteps. The Vikings get bounced. They get bounced in the first round. Everyone blames Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
And Kevin O'Connell sits here and says, I got T.J. Hawkinson, I got Jordan Addison, and I have the best receiver in the league, Justin Jefferson. Bring Aaron in here.
What a story, man.
And
what a story.
It's Brett Favre 2.0, almost
really
to a T.
Well, but that's it. Do you believe it's just a better – that you give him a better setting – he will be able to turn the clock back. Like,
what does that even mean? A better setting?
Better players.
Yeah, the Jets are a mess.
You guys know
They're
I've been very, very pro Aaron, and what I worry about is like if he goes, like I was somewhat in jest saying the Vikings thing, if he goes to Minnesota, which this is literally me making stuff up, will he run Kevin O'Connell's offense? Because clearly Kevin O'Connell's offense works. There's no doubt. I mean, it worked with the Pastronaut, it worked with Kirk Cousins, it's worked with Nick Mullins when he was in there, and it's worked with Sam Darnold. Will he go in there and say, I'm running this guy's offense, or are we going to get the same old Aaron Rodgers style offense where he does not, want to do anything anybody else is bringing in? I look at Matt LaFleur in the pack. You didn't want to run Matt LaFleur stuff.
Yep.
They got him out of town. Jordan Love's running it. He's running it pretty good right now. So to Noodles to answer that is like, I wonder where Aaron's at with his ability to say, okay, the idea that I'm just going to get Devontae and have a star receiver like Garrett Wilson and play, I have the greatest arm in the world, we're going to kind of draw plays in the sand and now sling the ball around and watch me do everything. Those days clearly are numbered, so he needs to have like an actual NFL scheme, if that makes sense.
Well, that's it, man. It would. I think he's closer to like Peyton Manning at the end in Denver type of situation. Like you got to get there, and you got to rely on a great defense. You have to have a great defense, which he was supposed to have this year.
Yeah,
and it didn't happen. But you saw Peyton up close and personal. He couldn't throw the ball 15 yards down the field.
Well, that's what he did, though. He relied on a massive running game out there.
Exactly.
What's funny, Hayes, this is a true story. I'm not making this up. But the day before we beat them in the Super Bowl, my dad it was in New Jersey. We were staying because it was in MetLife. And my dad comes in Saturday night. He's like, what do you think? And they had the greatest offense statistically in the history of the NFL. And I'm like, Dad, the Super Bowl was 2 weeks ago when we played in the NFC Championship. We're going to win by 30. And he's like, shut the heck up. Like, there's no way. Yeah. And I remember sitting there and I was like, matchup-wise, Peyton's situation at the time did not match up well with what we did on defense. He was going to sit here and scheme guys open, and he had the neck surgery, and the arm was a little so-so. He wasn't slinging the ball, wasn't very mobile, and it was like against the Legion of Boom, you have to be able to throw fastballs because you can't really scheme us up. We play the same defense every single play to a degree. We were just lining up and saying we got better
closing on guys,
Johnnies and Joes than your X's and O's. So it was like, that's kind of why I sit here with Aaron and you make the Peyton comparison. I almost think that if he adopted a Peyton Manning style offense, he would be better because to me, if he could use his brain to scheme guys up where they're open, it would be a much better situation. Right now, it's very matchup based. Hey, I got Devontae on this guy. Devontae needs to win, and I'm going to thread the needle with the prettiest throw anyone's ever seen. Mm-hmm. And it's a smaller, the margin for error shrinks dramatically when Devontae and you haven't played in 3 years. Your arm is not as live. You can still sling it as it was 4 or 5 years ago. Again, if it was a little more tactical, I think he'd have success. That's my own take.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I don't think you can teach an old dog new tricks, especially the most stubborn dog in the game, and that's Aaron Rodgers, man.
The trailer is absurd, though.
It's absurd, and it's just going to be ayahuasca. I don't even know what his story is going to be. But, all right, you guys are locking in just to confirm Packers plus 3.5. Pick is in to start Week 14.
O-Dog, we got to get this one, and then
Lock
it's
it in.
on this weekend.
Okay.
It's on.
baby.
All right,
We're
my
turning
parts
it
will be in
early.
here tomorrow. We are the team of the whole country is behind us. The whole country outside of you snobs in Toronto. Everyone else, I'll bet you LaSalle, Ontario loves us.
There's
Down in
no
the Sun
way.
Belt, down in the
That's
Sun Belt,
below the belt, Hayes.
They love
That's
us down
bad
there.
karma.
They
That's
love
below
us
the belt
down
right there.
I hate to say this, but go Lions.
Steinbach, Manitoba loves you.
Steinbach is they do support Hazen Bro. All right, boys. Good luck tonight. Catch you guys on the group chat. There it is. Luke Willson joining us. I'll throw that up for my part C as well.
No, you're not.
lonely
It's so
here, Matt.
stupid.
Feeling lonely. Pierre LeBrun coming up. Steve Phillips will join us in our best bet still to come as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Pierre LeBrun coming up. Alex Ovechkin out there taking laps in full gear today.
Isn't that unreal? 17 days, or has it been 17 days?
17
or 2
days
weeks?
ago he broke his leg, which that seems long, man. It seems like it was a week ago. That's how quickly the season's going. But he's out there. He'll be back playing in a week or two, I'll bet.
Dude, I bet you, I bet you on Monday sometimes he's just going to come out and say, I'm playing, I'm good. I don't care. Like, leg
Skating
better.
around.
Go
there.
Leg better.
Just tapes his leg up and goes out and plays.
Yeah.
27 behind Gretzky and Washington
Look
in
at
town
this guy.
tomorrow.
This guy is so old school. He's just like, I skate, and he just... Like, if you ever watch him walk in, you know how they show the players walking in their suits? This guy's tie is on sideways, okay?
Always.
Hair everywhere.
He's got one button that's not done up on his midsection. It's
Always.
not tucked in, and it's like, this guy looks like a guy at a beer league tournament that's been just crushed all night walking in. His hair's a mess. It's outrageous.
It's crazy. And look at
is.
the size of his pants. His hockey pants are massive. All right,
Dude,
more on that.
how about on the plane? He had the Subway bag, and he said,
Chips.
I want the chips, too.
Yeah. He had the full combo. Pierre LeBrun, Steve Phillips, and our best bet still to come. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.